Welcome, low ego action heroes. I'm Debbie Levitt from Delta CX. We are a full service CX and UX consultancy. And this is my Axure 10 Core Skills course. I've been using Axure since February 2011, and I've been teaching it for many, many years. And in fact, I've been one of Axure's recommended trainers since 2014. This course is designed to take you from super Axure newbie or Axure afraid all the way through to confident intermediate. So if you've landed on this one video, there are many, many others. Please check our Axure lessons playlist for a lot more videos about using Axure. The Delta CX YouTube channel has over 500 videos on it as of when I'm recording this in December 2021, and I hope you'll subscribe and join in some of our live streams. I'm live usually 3 or 4 times a week with teaching UX research and design, talking about CX, helping people get into the profession, helping leaders and managers, and of course, don't forget Tuesday, office hours, Ask Me Anything. So subscribe and hang out here. So thanks for being here. Please subscribe and let's jump into that next Axure lesson.
Let's create a custom visually designed drop list. Of course, you can use Axure's medium fidelity drop list if you just want to work fast and the visual design isn't that important. But if you want full visual design, then we've got to build it from scratch. So let's do that together. I've created a new blank page that I'm going to call drop list and menus, since I'll use it in a later lesson as well. And let's start with some of the elements that tend to make up a drop list. So typically there is some sort of box at the top where it might say select one, or it might say whatever the people have already chosen. I'm going to make mine, let's make it 200, and you can join in my sizing, or you can change to something else. Let's say 200 by 45, and I'm going to type right on this box and say select one. Now you might be thinking, Deb, in an earlier lesson you said you can't type on a box. You just typed on a box. What are you talking about? Well, you can't have users of the prototype type on a box. They can only type into a form field, but we can type onto a box because a box is really just a shape that can have text or not have text. So we can type on boxes, but boxes won't be editable form fields for our prototype users. We would have to use the text field for that. Okay, so in building this, I need a few other components. Oops, I'm going to jump into icons, and I'm going to grab, you can grab a chevron or a caret, whatever you like. The chevrons look like this, and the carets look like this. So we could grab a caret down and drag it into place. Now, of course, it's a little big, so you might want to bring yours down a bit. Let's see if I bring mine to 18 wide. It's a little big, but more realistic, so I'm not going to go too far with the exact sizing of it. You can pick what works for you, and I'm eyeballing to where I think the middle is. And you might be thinking, well, I don't want this centered. I want it off to the left. And I say, I know, we're going to get there. That's going to be some global widget styling, of course, but let's first build some of the default pieces for this, and then we'll circle back to some of the styling. Now, another thing that I'm going to do, we've talked before about when do I name something in Axure and when don't I name it. I tend to name things that are important, that I want to find again later, like somewhere in the outline, and especially things that are the object or the target of an interaction. Later on, this box is going to be the target of an interaction because we're going to tell Axure to write whatever people select from the drop list up here. That means this is a target of the action. Something's going to be written here. So just to make this easy for myself, I'm going to call this drop list top so I can easily find it later. And again, it's just the box. Let's grab another box and let's start to do some designing. I'll do a little arrow up of what it will look like when the menu comes down. So of course these should be the same width. They should pretty much overlap. And the mistake that some people make here is they just start typing choices on this box. So if we're going to do days of the week, they just start typing Monday and Tuesday. But that's not going to be right, because if we think about how a drop list works, and you can always pull out a medium fidelity one and test it, we have to have individual text widgets for each thing because they're going to be separate choices. They're going to have their own hover states. They're going to have their own selected states. So that means they can't just be text in this box. Otherwise, hovering would light up the whole box. And that's not the way that's going to work. I'm also going to zoom in really close on mine so that you can see up close how I'm building this, because there's a couple of sneaky tricks that I like to do. So just to get some text, I'm going to drag out the label and just put it over here for now. And I'm going to call it Monday because let's imagine that's the first choice in our drop list. Now, if we were to just put Monday, let's say over here, then the problem is that when we have a hover state or a selected state, it's only going to be the size of this box. That's going to look really weird. We know that the hover states tend to go full left to right. So I could bring it over here, but there's a little trick that I like to do, again, just for realism. You'll notice if you look really closely, Monday is at X31 and the box is at X30. That means they're offset by 1 pixel, which means that any hover state I create or selected state will not overlap this outside box. If you put this at X30 and you make it the same width, then when this has a hover state or a selected state, it would break up the outside line for that color. That's up to you. I tend to like to keep the outside line in place, so that means each of my choices tend to be the full width minus 2 pixels, 1 pixel for the left and 1 pixel for the right. So again, my box lives at X30 and my choice lives at X31, and then my box is 200 pixels wide and my choice or my item is 198. There's that 2 pixels difference. Now I might also want this to be a nice height, taking into account fat fingering or something like that. Oop, I accidentally had the ratio locked on. Let's give this a height. Let's say we could do 40. That looks a little big, maybe 30, but I do have it zoomed in tremendously, so that's going to be weird. I'm also going to slide it up so it's also 1 pixel from the top line. So here we go. Now it's inside all of these lines and it's not going to overlap them. Now you might say, hey Deb, we want this indented and we want this vertically aligned. Yes, we haven't built our global widget styles yet. We can do that now. So we're going to want 1 global widget style for this one, which will give it the look that we want. And we're actually going to need 3 global widget styles for this one if you think about it. Now, if you realize later that you need another style and you hadn't thought about it, you can always circle back and make that style. You don't have to make all the styles at the same time. So don't feel badly if you're not good yet at predicting how many styles you're going to need. I go back all the time and make styles I forgot to make. But I know from teaching this lesson that we need the default of how this looks when it's just a choice in the menu and it's not being hovered over and it's not selected. And then we're going to need those hover states and that selected state. So let's go in and create these styles. So I'm going to start with, let's say there's a new style. And now if it's completely new, then I've got to build it from scratch. And that means the outside boundary lines and things like that. But let's cancel this a moment. Let me show you another way that you can do this. Let's say there's a lot we like about this style and we just want to improve upon it. I can go to Style. And I should be able to say that there is a new style and I want to copy the styles from the selected widget. I've noticed that in Axure 10 this seems to be a bug right now. This is not copying the properties from the selected widget, but hopefully by the time you are trying something like this, you will be able to use this. It is still not working for me, but that is what it is supposed to do. So let's build Droplist top, and we're going to need a line color border, so there is a box around it. We do want that. And again, what color the line is totally up to you. You can pick whatever works for you. This is 7/9. I'm just going to stay with it. And font size and typeface, you can adjust that if you want. I'll leave it the way it is because I'm not going to spend the time on that, but you can. We do want this left aligned, and we do want it vertical middle. But if we have no padding, then, so this would be 2 padding. Take a look at 0 padding. It's right up against there. So I would say, just for our purposes, let's try maybe padding of 10. And that looks pretty nice. Now we can also, let's duplicate that. We don't have to duplicate it. We can just start making other ones. So I'm going to make Droplist item, and this will be the default look for Monday and the other things we're going to create there. In this case, I don't want any border around these because we have the big box that goes around everything. It's not like each individual choice on the drop list has its own box or borders. We might want font size or color. I'll leave that to you, but I'm definitely going to say align left. And I'm going to say vertical align middle, and I'm going to say left padding. Now, here is the trick question. If we used padding of 10 on the thing that's above it, and we want these words to line up, how much padding do these other ones under it, the individual items, need to have? It's a trick question because you think that the answer is 10. You did set 10 up in the select one, so we should have 10 below it. But remember that we offset Monday by 1 pixel. That means for these to line up, you would only need 9. Now we're not watching Monday change as we do this because we didn't assign this new style to Monday. So let's say OK. And remember, we created a style, but we didn't assign the style. So let's go in and find, where is it? Here we go, drop list item. And if you take a look at that, these do line up. This one with the left padding of 10, and this one with the left padding of 9 plus the extra pixel. Now, before we go and copy and paste Monday and make other choices, let's really build it out. Let's make that hover state and that selected state. So I'm going to duplicate these so I'm not starting from scratch because I liked the way that one looked, and I will call it drop list item hover. So when people mouse over this, what should it look like? So I'm going to pick some wacky colors just so it's really clear when people are hovering. So I'm going to grab this teal color and I will say font color white. So this will be white on teal for my hover state. And then I'll duplicate them again and we'll say selected. So when this is the selected one, let's grab wacky mustard color with white text. So if it's selected, it'll be mustard color, and if it's hover, it'll be teal. Now remember, we've created styles, but we didn't apply them. So come on over to interactions, check your shape properties, go to add style effect, and let's teach Axure that there is a hover state, which is the mouse over. And we want to find that by name. And if you're not sure, just start typing your name and it will help you find it there on the list. Drop list item hover. Okay, so there's our blue version. And then we need to do add style effect again for selected. And we will pick the drop list selected. Here it is. So there's that mustard color. I am not claiming that this is good design. I'm just showing you how to use the technique and you can be a better visual designer. Now, I'm going to copy paste these and Axure will help me line these up. There we go. And I'll put another, let's just practice a drop list with 3 choices. But of course, the more choices you want, the more stuff you have to put here. Now, some people believe that you should create your drop list from a repeater. And I say 2 things to that. Number 1, you might be overbuilding for what you're trying to do. That might be a bit much. Number 2, I don't teach repeaters until my advanced lesson. So if you do want to be able to build a drop list now when you're still learning Axure and getting used to it and building the interactions and you don't want to jump into something too advanced just yet, then you can build it this way. Even though I know how to use repeaters, I am typically building my drop lists this way. So just because it can be done another way doesn't mean it should be done another way. And Axure does warn that sometimes the more repeaters you have, you could slow your stuff down. So you can always build it as a repeater if that's the way you like to do it, but if you start to find performance issues, I would unrepeater it and use this technique. So I'm just checking that my box ends here before the bottom line, just so I have everything nice and neat and nothing's overlapping the lines. And there we go. Now we could baby step test this at this point just to see what it looks like. And of course, it doesn't look totally realistic just yet, but we do have a drop list top area. We have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we do have the hover states working. Now we haven't built any of the functionality into this. We've just set it up with our shapes and our words and our icon and some of our styling. So now let's build it and bring it to life. Now this is going to be our first time possibly using a dynamic panel. I tend to make many things into panels where you'll see other people making them into groups. I talked about this earlier and I'm going to talk about it a lot. I use dynamic panels for everything, partially out of habit because once upon a time you didn't have groups with the ability to write interactions on them, and partially because I am a serial ungrouper. I group things and then later on I go, why is that grouped? This is annoying me, and I ungroup it, and any interactions I've built on the group are now toast. So I'm kind of more of a dynamic panel person. So I am going to, let's just see that again. I'm going to select our three choices and the boundary box by drawing that box around all of these things. Axure tells me you have selected 4 things. That sounds correct. We have 3 choices and the outside box. And I'm going to context menu click and say create dynamic panel. Now, we haven't totally talked about dynamic panels yet. There is a lesson coming up on them, so this is a little bit of a weird preview. You're building something before I've really gone into what it is. So make sure you check out the upcoming dynamic panels lesson for a little bit more of the in-depth look at what the heck these things are and how we use them. But for now, let's experiment. Let's play around with it a little. First thing I do after creating a dynamic panel is I like to give it a name. You'll see it over here in the outline. It's just dynamic panel. But I'm going to name it Droplist menu. This is the menu or list or whatever you want to call it. That comes, you could call it Droplist list. This is what comes down when people open the menu. So open the Droplist. So I think of it in my head as kind of a menu, but you know, kind of not. And you can see now we have this purple mask. The purple mask is Axure's way of telling you this is a visible dynamic panel. If you're in Axure 9 or before, dynamic panels have a blue mask when they are visible, so purple is new to Axure 10. If we want this to be not seen by default, the newbie mistake here is to click onto the canvas, get to the page interactions, and build an interaction that says, hey Axure, when you load the page, hide this thing. That would be the newbie mistake that I tend to see. The better way to go is to take this dynamic panel and just tell Axure that by default it's hidden. Now, to me, as a UX architect, I would have put it here over with disabled, selected, error, and things we can tell Axure are true by default. Like, hey, by default, this is not seen. But that's not here. Bizarrely, it is up here as the eyeball next to these coordinates and sizing. So you can say not seen. Now you can see it got a little bit of a yellow glow, and if I click away from it, the entire panel is yellow. That is the mask that Axure uses to show us that this is a hidden dynamic panel. Remember, we have masks here in the view toolbar, the view menu rather. And if I say don't mask dynamic panels, then hypothetically this thing would stop being yellow and it would go away, but it looks like there's a little bit of a, mask hidden objects. There you go. So that would be how you would do that, but then you would not be able to see that you have anything there, and you would not know if it's a dynamic panel or not. So again, I'm not sure why these masks are optional. I always keep them on, but you do what works for you. So that means by default, people cannot see this. It exists, it's here, but if I go back and refresh, you'll see we don't see it. It's going to take some sort of interaction or instruction on the page for Axure to show this. Now, the next thing that we might want to do is build the interaction on this Droplist top, where when we click it, the menu or list comes down, and if we click it again, the menu or list comes up. Now, a newbie mistake that I've seen here is people will build a box, they'll drop an icon, which is a separate widget, and sometimes they either type on the box or they drag out a third widget, like a label or a paragraph, and they type words here. And then I see them writing the interactions on all three things. I think this is overbuilding. The way that many of us are going to do this is either people are going to select all of these, group them, and build the interaction on the group, which again is not my style, but you can certainly do. Or you're going to do the way that I like to do, which is I come down to the library and I grab a hotspot. We have previously met the hotspot. The hotspot is great for tappable areas that are larger than your icon or text or whatever it is. But if you just want to build this interaction once in one place, I love the hotspots. Again, some people love the groups, love the groups. But it's just not my style. But there's nothing wrong with it. It's only because I know later I'm going to break my own file and undo my group and kill my interaction. So here we are working on the hotspot. How do we know we're on the hotspot? It says hotspot interactions in the top right. It says hotspot name in the top right. It even says hotspot over here in the outline. I'm not going to name it. It's not that important, but I will build interactions on it. And I'm going to build two interactions. I'm going to build one that opens the menu or list and one that closes it. This will also help us practice our conditions, but also build our first interaction related to a dynamic panel and our first condition related to a dynamic panel. So it's a good baby step lesson. So what is the event or trigger that would start this action? Somebody clicks or taps on the hotspot. What do we want to happen? Well, again, think about user intentions. If they're clicking on this top part and they can't see this menu, they must mean to show it. So we would choose as the action, show or hide. Axure says, cool, what am I showing or hiding? Now the newbie mistake here is someone will say, show Monday, show Tuesday, show Wednesday, and show the rectangle around them. In reality, these individual elements aren't hidden. They're in a panel, and the panel is hidden. So don't make the mistake of hiding the individual elements and then showing the individual elements. It will work, but it is a little bit more work, and I think it's better to just do it this way. So I can say, show the whole panel, which will reveal everything in the panel, which are all of those elements. Do I want an animation? For a drop list, these usually slide down. So I will pick a slide down. We don't need any of these fancy things. Slide down is going to work well enough, and we don't have special behaviors, though we'll learn those in some later lessons. Now we can baby step test this before we write conditions, because you know I love to check stuff before we've written a condition, because then if it doesn't work, we know it was the condition. So all I expect to happen is if I click this, the menu will show. There we go. You know what? Realistic enough for me. That's working. We don't have the menu going back up. We do have this happening, but we don't have the rest of it happening. So let's take a look at, okay, so what's next? Now we need to write that condition. We need to tell Axure, yeah, you know, I only want you to show the menu if they're clicking on it and they can't see it. So remember to think out these tiny granular moments that you've kind of taken for granted. You take for granted that when you click a drop list, it shows, and you click it again and it hides. But Axure is a robot and is only going to do what you tell it. So now we have to think of these in tiny micro moments, and we have to say, we only want to show the menu if people can't see it. So we need to write a condition that asks Axure, hey Axure, can people not see the drop list menu panel? So let's take a look at that. So we'll say drop list menu not visible, just to remind myself of what the heck I'm doing here. and we've got a condition. And Axure guesses at the condition, and they're way wrong. We don't care if a certain piece of text says something. We care about visibility. So here it is. If you want to know if something is shown or hidden, if people can see it or not see it, then you want visibility of widget. Now we know that we want it to be not seen. So that would be visibility false. Visibility true would mean that it is shown and it's happy eyeball and people can see it. But the question is, what can they see? Now, by default, Axure throws in this, but let's take a look at what this is. This is what we're working and building on right now, which is the hotspot. Oh, no, we don't care if people can see the hotspot or not. That's not really what's going on here. We want to know if they can see the Droplist menu or not. Oops, slippery mouse. There we go. Hey, Axure, is the visibility of the Droplist menu panel equal to false? I usually call that panel. Sorry about that. Droplist menu panel equal to false. So can people not see the Droplist menu? Now again, we can eyeball our interaction and see if it sounds like it makes logical sense. If people can't see the Droplist menu panel because it's visibility false, and someone clicks, well then show it. Okay, that sounds logical. Let's give it a try. Refresh, click. Okay, that's working. Baby step testing, working along the way. If your menu didn't show, check your condition, especially if it worked before your condition. You might have accidentally put if visibility of Droplist menu equals true, or you might have accidentally put if visibility of this equals true, and this is the hotspot. So some troubleshooting tips there. Now, let's take a look at how we would let people click again to have the menu hide. Now, we don't need a whole other event. We're still talking about clicking, but it's an additional set of possible outcomes, so we do add case. And this is if Droplist menu visible. So if people can see it, then they must be clicking to hide it. Now, this is another example of something binary where writing the condition is optional, because if the first condition is met, Axure will just do that and stop. If the first condition is not met, it will do the second one or else. But just for practice, let's write out the condition fully. If the visibility of the Droplist menu equals true, so if people can truly see it, what should Axure do? Now we have to pick our actions. We're going to go back to show hide, the Droplist menu, not the hotspot, and we're going to say hide it. Now typically when Droplist menus go away, they do not actually slide back up. If you watch some of them in action, they typically just disappear, which would be animate none. If you want to play with a slide up, you can, but I'm not sure it's totally realistic. So now let's eyeball this one. If visibility of Droplist menu equals true, people can see the Droplist menu, and someone clicks, hide the Droplist menu. That sounds like what we're shooting for. Let's give it some testing because there's still more to build here. Okay, that worked. That came down. I'm going to click again with my trackpad and it disappeared. So we are getting there. There's definitely more to build, but that is looking more like a realistic drop list. And again, you can style it however you want. You can give things rounded corners and whatever you like. You can change the font, the icon. It's all up to you. But now we need to deal with Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. We need to make sure that Axure knows how to turn on the selected states and also how to write the selected thing in the drop list top. So let's go there. Now for dynamic panels, which we'll learn shortly in our Intro to Dynamic Panels lesson, to edit a dynamic panel, you need to go into its state. I know that makes no sense yet. See the coming lesson on that, but we can double click on this state or we can double click on the panel to go into the first state. Now you feel like, it looks like, I don't know what just happened, Deb. The purple went away, but nothing really looks different. Okay, but now you should have more direct access to Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday as individual objects. If this is still confusing, Axure allows you to isolate a panel or panel state in reality so that you can work on it without any distractions of what else is going on your screen. So this was isolate in Axure 9, and in Axure 10 it's view all. So here I am just looking at what's inside my dynamic panel. Now let's take a look. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Now, one thing we didn't do here is we didn't teach Axure there can be only one. Remember that if someone picks Monday and then someone picks Tuesday, Axure might light them both up with their selected styles, my mustard color. But we don't want that to happen. We want to teach Axure there can be only one. So I've clicked on Monday. I'm going to shift click on Tuesday and shift click on Wednesday and do a show all for my properties and give them a selection group name. And that way Axure knows there's a relationship between these three, and if you pick one, then the others must be unselected or selected false. So for selection group, I'm just going to call this Droplist so that it's got a unique name. Okay, so that'll teach Axure there can be only one. None of these I'm going to say is selected by default. If you're using a drop list where something is selected by default, like by default Tuesday is selected, then of course you want to select it and check off selected by default, but we don't need that. We're going to imagine none of these have been selected and the drop list just says select one at the top. So next, we would take a look at how we make this work. When people click Monday, what happens here? So we have to think about the user intention, and we have to think about these granular micro moments of how a drop list really works that we've probably never thought of before. And again, if you're not sure, you can always grab a medium fidelity drop list, which I will do quickly. And let's drop a couple of things into it, and let's take a look at what it does so we can have a clue for ourselves. Let's imagine that it says select one, and let's imagine that it says Monday. So let's just practice what this looks like, and then we can think about, let me cut it and paste it over here. You don't have to do this. This is just a little moment where you can kind of double check yourself when you're trying to recreate standard components and you're like, how does that work again? So the menu comes down. I'm going to pick Monday. There's hover state. And then what happens when I click Monday? Okay, the menu goes away. Monday is written up here, though it's a little cut off because of my giant font. And okay, so that's two things that happened. Monday went away. Monday got written at the top. The menu went away. And if I open up the menu again, Monday is selected by default. So that means in order for our drop list to work realistically, and I'll go back into my dynamic panel and I'll isolate it. In order for this to work realistically, we need to build clicking on Monday or tapping on Monday to have 3 actions that Axure has to take. So I'm going to build from the editor. If someone clicks or taps on Monday, now in some cases, the order of actions that we tell Axure does matter. We'll learn that later. But in this case, it probably doesn't matter. They're all going to happen in a fraction of a second, and people won't notice what happened first. So I'm just going to do these in kind of any old order. Let's see. First, let's do a hide to hide the drop list menu. Make sure you choose hide, not show. That will be something you'll troubleshoot later. If your menu didn't disappear, check that you picked hide and not show, because show is the default. I'm going to say no animation so that it just time travels away. We also want to say set selected. Remember, we made a selected state for Monday, so we want to teach Axure that this, which in this case is Monday because that's what we're operating on now, is selected true, which will of course inspire our style effect and we'll get that mustard color. Now the third thing we want to happen is we want Monday to be written on the top of the drop list where it previously said select one. When we want Axure to write something somewhere, the action is set text. So now Axure says, well, where am I writing this text? What's the target, the object? Now, I knew this was coming, so I made sure to name the drop list top so we could easily find it among all of our other rectangles. So, hey, Axure, I want you to write something on the drop list top. Remember, the target is where this is being written. And it's going to be text. And what do you want it to say? Now, we've got a beginner version of this, and we've got a little bit more intermediate version of this. So let me show you both. You could write Monday. And Axure says, great. People clicked on Monday. This is going to say Monday. Fantastic. In fact, let's baby step test it, and I'll show you that it works. No points taken off, even though there is a more advanced way to do it. Menu comes down, hover over Monday, so it's kind of a blue. Click, and it says Monday at the top. And if I open it again, it's selected. So that's working great. But let me show you by opening up this. Actually, before I do that, let me show you quickly. We could copy and paste this interaction onto Tuesday and onto Wednesday, but you're probably going to notice that it's broken unless you go in and make changes to it. Why? Because if you copied and pasted this, let's do it, onto Tuesday, paste, it says write Monday on drop list top. So if you did write Monday on drop list top, you'd have to go into each of these and say, nope, this one says Tuesday, and you'd have to go into Wednesday and say, nope, this one says Wednesday. But that's why I'm going to show you something a little bit more advanced. I just clicked undo, so that interaction is gone and Tuesday has nothing on it. I'm going to change Monday to something a little bit more advanced so that we can save ourselves that step and make this a little bit more future-proofed. So instead of saying Monday, just write the words Monday. Let's think about what we wish Axure could do. I wish Axure could take a look at whatever is written on this, because this is Monday. Whatever is written on this, go write it on the drop list top. And we can do that. So it looks like this. Instead of text, it would be, hey, Axure, go look at the text that's written on a certain widget. Whatever text is written on that widget is what I want you to put on the drop list top. So Axure says, great, which widget am I copying from? And I say this, because this right now is Monday. So whatever this says is going to be written on the top. Let's give it a baby step test. And it says Monday. And this is future-proofed because if you come in later and you change this, Monday, y'all, well, I forgot my apostrophe, but you know where I'm going with that. If this suddenly said something else, then quite easily all I have to do is baby step test it because I told Axure, whatever this says, write it on the top. And that is some of the magic of moving into some more intermediate approaches to Axure. Again, writing the word Monday on that would have been absolutely fine. No points taken off. But if we go to copy and paste it to the other days, we are going to have to go into each interaction manually and change what word was written. But here, since everything that's happening here has the word this, and this is always me, the thing we're working on right now, I can say copy, which I've done on my keyboard, or I can do from here. And I can go to Tuesday, and I can click paste. And we can take a look at this. Set this to true. Tuesday is now this. And drop list top to text on this. That should work also. And you can baby step test here. So that way, if you choose Tuesday, it should say Tuesday, and Tuesday is selected. If that's not happening for you, check if you're using this or if you picked a specific widget as your target, because that could be the problem. And check if you said text on this or if you said specifically the word Monday, because then you would have to change that. And I can go to Wednesday and I can say paste. And now that should work. And again, a typical newbie mistake here is to forget, and even I forget it sometimes when I'm teaching, is to put all of these in a selection group so that there can only be one selected at a time. If you are testing this, and remember, it's always good to test it Realistically, hey, I want Tuesday. No, wait a minute, I want Wednesday. Okay, Tuesday selected, Wednesday selected. Open it up again. Make sure only Wednesday is selected. If Tuesday and Wednesday are selected, then you forgot to put this into its selection group, so there can be only one. And to get out of this isolated view in Axure 10, I would do this back button and click away from it, click away on the canvas until I am back in regular land where it says page interactions. Axure 9, I think you have an X at the top of your screen in the middle in the blue bar where you would get out of that mode. So this is pretty much our custom designed drop list. And again, the visual design is ultimately up to you, but this at least will give you the technique for creating this from scratch with whatever look you want. And again, you can make it different widths if you want. You just might need to move the icon around. Well, I think that's it. So I'll see you in the next video.